Hi, you guys. I see people are joining in, which is fantastic. We're going to get rolling at around 10 a.m., but I just see people are starting to join us now. Um, let's see here. I see we've got several of our speakers. Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, you guys. I see Donna. Donna, great to see you. I haven't actually had like a face-to-face with you since you've gotten married and had all the good things happen. Congratulations to you. All right, let me make sure I got all of our speakers co-hosted here.
I just need a little bit of help. I'm Barbara, and it's showing on my computer that even though I've used Zoom a zillion times and I just used it yesterday, that my video is not coming up. I'm trying to start my video and it's giving me a message that it's failing to start the video camera. Please select another video camera in settings. I only have one video camera. I'm not sure what's going on.
Maybe you may want to just restart your computer. It could be a driver thing. So maybe just close it down and restart it again and see if that makes a difference.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Okay, no problem.
Praying.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully it'll work. If not, she'll be speaking us from the astral. Disembodied voice. All right, and we've got Cass joining us, a longtime Wisdom Soup member. We've got Wendy Witt joining us, who is awesome from way on the East Coast. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and get our speakers. Kimberly, I'm going to go ahead and make you co-host. So then, since you're going to be our first speaker today, there we go. And then I'll swatch that around as we go. And so how's everybody doing? We had a crazy storm here night before last. I slept through it. The first night in a long time, I slept like a log. I wasn't even aware that we had this crazy storm and there's all these trees down and people are without power. But all of you obviously have power, which is great. So how about where you are, Kimberly? Did you have power over there?
We were in a little nest of power surrounded by thousands, tens of thousands of power outages homes. But my funny story about that is that at 1:45 in the morning, I couldn't sleep. It was so noisy. My husband sleeps through everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm getting out. And so I got onto Facebook to I live in West Seattle, that part of Seattle. And someone just then had posted a picture from her balcony above Harbor Avenue, which is what looks out across Puget Sound to downtown Seattle. And a whole trampoline had blown off of somebody's property and landed on their parking strip. But that entire road, it's like a mile long, is nothing but condos. There's no lawn property banked by a green space. So it had to come off from who knows where, not hit any trees, not hit any tall condos, and not hit any humans or cars, and land squarely off of a fire hydrant.
Oh my God.
Anyone missing a trampoline?
That's
There's a wind. Oh my God, 70 miles an hour.
Was it really last night? Yeah. Oh my God.
Between 59 and 70 miles an hour.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, I'm glad I slept through it.
Hi, Jose.
Wow. Hi, Kimberly.
Yeah.
We've been trying to touch base. We've been, I guess we'll catch up today.
Since the Netflix show.
Yes.
Yes. Big excitement, you guys. Big excitement. And I'm very excited to be having you guys here to be part of Wisdom Soup, just coming off fresh off of the success of that show. So, so welcome, you guys. It is 10 a.m. We're just getting started here. Welcome to Wisdom Soup. We've got so many of you who are longtime members and some people who are newer to the group. And so for those of you who are newer, I will give you a quick intro about what Wisdom Soup is. Just a moment here and let me make sure that if you could just double check. I normally will select mute for the default, but if I did not select mute, if you could mute yourself to make sure that we are, there we go. Okay. To make sure that we have a clear channel, unless we're doing some questions and answers or something like that. So my name is Ann Tucker, and I am, oh, you can't hear me. Okay, let's see. Raga, I can't hear me. Can you guys hear me? Everybody can hear me? Okay, raise your hand if everybody can hear. Okay, so Raga, it must be something with your settings. So maybe check on that, see if your speakers are So my name is Ann Tucker. I am the founder of Wisdom Soup, and Wisdom Soup is a spiritual community. We've been meeting together for almost 4 years now, which is amazing. We started here in Bellevue, Washington. We started as an in-person meetup. And I started the meetup because I was looking for my peeps. I was looking for my community as I was going through my spiritual awakening, and really I felt like I just wasn't resonating with the people that I knew, and couldn't find anybody else who was going through the same stuff I was going through. So I started this group, and through this group, I have found this amazing community and wonderful friends, and have been able to grow through this process. We meet once a month, always on a Thursday, second Thursday of the month. We usually meet in the evenings, but I've had the last couple in the morning since we've been online, and we've had a lot more people participating from other parts of the world. So we're kind of experimenting whether it's mornings or evenings. We'll probably vary that up based on what the topic is and who the speakers are. But the kind of stuff we talk about, it's always spirit, whatever sounds fun. That's, and we go full woo, like we go the full 9 yards. We go into, fairies and dragons. We talk about, dream interpretation. We talk about, all kinds of energy healing. We talk about, anything that sounds fun, including near-death experience. And it's amazing to me that in the 4 years of doing this, different topics every time, we always find more stuff to talk about, but we have not yet talked about near-death experience. So it just seems like the time is right. And it always seems like this. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times the way that I get these intuitive hits, I'm not even aware that I'm getting it, and then let things unfold so beautifully. So I just had this like, oh, it would be fun to do near-death experience. And then it comes right on the heels of when, many of the speakers in our group here have been part of this Netflix documentary that just launched about near-death experience. So it's a wonderful time for us to support them, and in terms of the launch of that, a fantastic thing that's going out and really communicating this message that we are more than our physical selves. So it just all came together beautifully. So anyway, so we do have a panel today of speakers, and a wonderful panel. So I'm really, really excited to be able to share this panel with you guys. And we do have chat going on here too. So feel free to keep an eye on that as conversation is happening on the side. Thank you, Amina, for offering that. I think that people are entering without me having to admit them. So I think we're cool. And Edie saw the Netflix series. Amazing. Yep, I know, right? Super cool series. So we have 5 speakers with us today. We've got Kimberly Clark-Sharp, Jose Hernandez, Barbara Bartolome, and I think I'm pronouncing Bartolome correctly. Am I Barbara? I'm pretty sure.
It's Bartolome, but that's
Bartolome.
okay.
Thank you. I think I tried that like 4 ways. So Bartolome. Terry Yoder and Wendy Rose Williams are going to be our 5 speakers for today. So, and our first speaker of the day is going to be Kimberly, who goes by Kim, and she is one of our locals, a local star here in Seattle. And I'm actually delighted to meet Kim, and I can't believe I've gone this far without knowing her, because she is like my sister from another mother on the other side of Seattle, who has been running her own amazing spiritual community and doing incredible things in the world. So I'm delighted to meet her, and I think you guys will be too. If she looks familiar, so here is to tell you a little bit about her. If she looks familiar to you, because it may be because you saw her in the new Netflix docuseries, Surviving Death. She is the founder of Seattle International Association for Near-Death Studies, which is known as IANS. So whenever I say IANS, that's what I'm referring to, which is the world's oldest support group for near-death studies. Is since 1982 is when she started this. Now, if you can remember, if you were around back in 1982, which I think we all were, if you can remember the climate at that time and how not open people were, and you can imagine not only the courage that it took, but how important it was to start this group then. Through her leadership, other IANS organizations have grown around the world and created a home for near-death experiencers to find answers and community, as well as to help humanity become aware that we are more than just our physical selves. She is the author of the exciting book, After the Light, The Spiritual Path to Purpose, which is available on Amazon. You can find that there. It has lots of great reviews, 5 stars on Amazon. So Kimberly, we would love to hear your story. Oh, you're muted. Just a moment here. Yeah, I'll unmute you. You need to unmute your mic.
I just did it.
There you go.
Did
Perfect.
I override you?
You're good. No, you're good.
Yeah, I can pull everyone's leg and just keep going. And then God, and then ghosts. So, I was a senior. I'm going to talk about my own near-death experience and skip over the plethora of other subjects related that I could speak about, which is like a not subtle way of saying, bring me back. But what started it all was my own near-death experience in 1970 in Eastern Kansas with my dad at the Department of Motor Vehicles, which is in itself a joke because, you know, don't we all almost die at the DMV? And I was completely healthy. I was a college student. And as we were leaving the building, we stepped out the door and I collapsed. My dad's story should precede my own because we don't have the same memories. But what happened is that a uniformed nurse happened to be passing by the building, ran over, determined I didn't have a pulse. So this is just on the cusp of 911. And so an ambulance was called from a Kansas City, Missouri trauma center. And then the Shawnee Mission, Kansas volunteer fire department. They arrived first. They had a portable ventilator. They determined I wasn't breathing. They applied it to my mouth. It was new packaging, according to my dad. It had to be ripped open. It had two functions. The Anderson portable ventilator, for any of you in healthcare forever. One function was, of course, to ventilate. The other was to extract in case there are objects blocking the airway, like food. It would be food. It was on extract. So whatever oxygen was left in my body, the seal was tight. It sucked the oxygen off. And immediately apparent physically, even to my dad, who wasn't a healthcare professional, they started pumping air in. Well, part of my lungs had collapsed enough that kind of pumping air in requires a ventilator in an ICU. So it's gently done because our lungs are sticky things. This tremendously violent to my lungs blast of air, my lungs could not expand. Again, our lungs are moist and sticky. So the air had to go somewhere and it found its way to the outside of my skin. And I literally blew up like a human balloon. It's called epithelial emphysema, almost entirely fatal. So now there was a great big mess, but they continued to ventilate and do chest compressions and then gave up and told my dad there was nothing else they could do. A man came from behind this now big crowd of people because, dang, there's a girl down on the sidewalk, get on down there. So there's I'm going to call it a circus in my dad's opinion. He came from behind, pushing everyone aside, pulled the firefighters off, and did what we now call citizen CPR. He did mouth to mouth, which, by the way, if you're doing CPR, you don't need to do mouth to mouth anymore. Just chest compressions to the song Staying Alive, which is so ironic. Anyway, then he couldn't get anything, swear words. My dad's memory ends there. At some point, the ambulance did arrive. My body was thrown to the back of it. My dad jumped in, went to the emergency room. Things went sour there again. I hate to give away the end of a good book, but she lived. So anyway, that's what was physically going on. That resuscitation from the time I stepped out of the DMV to when we entered the ER was an hour and a half. That's a long time for a resuscitation, but obviously I was getting enough oxygen to have this conversation with you. I mean, this wasn't like, oh, a miracle, she came from the morgue. Obviously I was getting enough oxygen, probably too much. I think I'm smarter now than I was then, but we don't know. Anyway, here's what I remember. And there are key elements in this that are classic near-death experience content and one that is way not. But anyway, at first I could hear a woman's voice to my left saying, I'm not getting a pulse, I'm not getting a pulse. Now we know hearing seems to be the last sense to go. So I'm going to put this in the normal, earthbound elements. I was dying, but I could hear her. I assured her I wasn't. I was fine. I kept talking to her. I thought she could hear me, but I wasn't really talking, but it seemed like I was. So if we're around someone who's that ill or injured, keep speaking to them. I guarantee they can hear. I also guarantee probably they think they're talking to you, but keep speaking. Anyway, she was so upset. I thought, well, so I don't know if I got into like a near-death snit or just what, but I'm out of there. And I found myself in a very warm, cozy, gray matter, for lack of a better word, foggy, gray, foggy, but warm, not damp. And I knew I wasn't alone. And I also, but I couldn't see who else was there, but I knew I wasn't alone. And I was very comfortable. I felt like anyone would at the gate of, ready to board the airplane. I mean, I had my ticket. I was just waiting. I was so calm and comfortable. And I even had enough time to kind of look around. No eyeballs, funny, I could see, but there I was. And it honestly felt natural. And then, and I might add that in World War II, when there were more movies made about the afterlife globally than any other time in cinematic history, 100% of them had gray, foggy material in them at a time when the whole world was in danger. And I collect these old movies. Every single solitary one has gray, foggy material. So I think there's a consciousness among humans that knows that it's familiar to, but we forget a lot of things. And there's like a collective consciousness maybe. Anyway, then came the biggie, and that was a light, which I trivialized by saying a light because there are no words, but it was a light that was brighter than a million suns, if that's possible. There are no words. It exploded under me with an explosion. I've told this story so many times and I can't get the words. This light, it was all love. I could not have borne this amount of love in the flesh. I would have just been smithereens. It was intense and it was personal. I mean, it was all about how much I was loved. And again, just the brightness of it, and it spread out in all directions. Again, I didn't have eyeballs, they were in my body, but I could see, and I could see, this is so hard to describe, this light. I mean, it was going out in every direction that I could perceive endlessly. And at the same time, it was layering on itself endlessly. And I just knew somehow that I was literally beholding eternity, not only in time and space, that was where it was spreading out, but in dimensions. And there were endless dimensions. And what did I know in Kansas about dimensions? And yet I knew it was endless. It's eternity in time, but also in eternity and maybe where we're from, as a matter of fact. Haven't said that before. Maybe this is part of our spiritual home. Speaking of which, in the presence of this light, I did say, as if I had a voice, homey home, something I learned later that from my parents that I used to say when I was learning language and we were pulling back into the driveway of our house, and I go, homey home, homey home. And, you know, I was firstborn, so everything was a Gucci goo moment. And that's what I would say. That's what I said, quote unquote, in the presence of this light. It was home. And I'm going to tell you, people, it's home. So then the worst thing possible, I was communicating with this light, not in English, but much better than verbalization, by the way. But I was told I had to go back, and no, I'm homey home. I was surrounded by the most amazing love ever. And that was like a hard no from Kim. And I'm going to say God is this light, but that's, again, just 3 letters in the English language. It means nothing. You can say Baba if it, certain kind of reverence. There is no name, but for consensual agreement on what God is. I'm going to say I argued with God. And it was like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Well, on earth, I do believe we have free will, but outside of earth, it's God's game. And I was sent back under protest, but I missed my physical body by about 6 feet. Ironically, at the DMV, I did not get my license because I couldn't parallel park within 6 feet of the curb. Something true to this day, by the way. Never understood spatial elements at all. So now I am in what's called out-of-body experience. And there is my flesh looking pretty odd. I didn't judge that. What I was looking at was like, that's not me. Because the me that was me was out of body. It had no attachment to that body, that physical thing. It wasn't me at all. And then I saw a man that I didn't recognize lean over, and he put his mouth against that physical body. And I went, that's how I got back in my body. But I went through him. That's a side story I don't have time to tell, but felt everything about that dude. And was back in my body. And I, upon reflection much later, realized what drew me back was his love for me. It was compassion. Compassion is a very strong form of love. I'd just been with the greatest love of all, so I was going to be drawn to it in someone else. But the ride wasn't over yet because I'm back in my body, but miserable, fully conscious. But by the way, when I was admitted to the ER, my body temperature was 86, which sounds like a nice pool temperature in the summer. But for a body temperature, it's miserably cold. And I was running around in this dank, dark awfulness. Details I'll skip. It was horrible, though. It was awful. And I begged God to please take me back. Homie home, homie home. So God showed up again nicely and opened a portal or a window or something off to my right. And there was my heaven, unquestionably. And it was like just as far as I could see, blades of grass kind of drifting in a breeze, and white fence off into the distance and some low trees. The only thing is the colors were not of earth. The green of the grass was an intensity that I've never seen here. Same with the sky, an intensity of blue I've never seen. And also I was aware of the consciousness of every single blade of grass, which I translate into my life now in nature or even in a building. There are things, even rocks talk to me. I mean, everything's alive. It's just different levels of consciousness and communication, if you will. Anyway, I was told that if I went through that portal, that was it. That was my border. So it was like, see ya. And I was off. And then God was, well, just a minute. And there was a flash to my left of a place that I was told I would live if I chose to live. And I didn't recognize it. I just remembered where mountains met water. It wasn't Kansas. I didn't care. Off I am into my heaven. And then another flash distracted me. It's like, well, here's this. And there was, and this is what's very unusual. There was a gallery of portraits, and in English, I felt I could read the caption. The first one was best friend, next door neighbor, mentor, coworker. It went on like that. These were just ordinary people. And again, they were strangers, so I didn't care. And off I was through the portal. Now I was almost all the way through when there was another flash, and it showed me being of service. And I said, cool, I was back. Now, God would say I chose. Kim would say I was, thank you. Kim would say I was tricked. But nonetheless, I was back for good, not fully back. I remain in two worlds. And what I don't have time to share today is what happened after the light. There's a good title of a book. But thereafter, I completely trusted what we call God. I headed out to find where mountains met water. It turned out to be Seattle, after some real near misses in Lake Tahoe and San Francisco, and where I had adventures every step of the way, and then wound up becoming, and now I'm retired, clinical assistant professor at the University of Washington, where I taught death and dying for 20 years in the School of Medicine, where I pioneered the field of critical care social work at our local Harborview Medical Center, where I found a shoe on a ledge that was observed by a patient in another part of the hospital being resuscitated, where I met the world's first blind from birth near-death experiencer, brought her forth, and where I have seen what we call dead people and angels, what we call ghosties, which is different from what I call dead people. I call them ghosties. What I call negative energy. Some would say demons, scary stuff. It's an invisible, crowded place around me, and I don't conjure anything. It just is there, all led by love. And that's the bottom line. I have so much more to say in my moments left with you, but in that time, I just want to say, God bless you. Thank you for listening to me. Seattle Ions is the place. You can reach us at website is www.seattleions.org. We are a free helping organization going on 39 years of service to the community, not only of near-death experiencers, but people who are grieving, people who've had similar spiritual experiences, out of body and such, visions, and the general curious public like you do, Anne. So I'm pleased to meet you, girl, because I cannot believe we haven't met. I mean, we're like in the same.
I know.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share.
Oh, it's an amazing story. And I can't let you go without asking you a little bit about the how your gifts change. You said you feel like it's this open traffic now, that you have this. So can you just give us a minute or two of how that happened for you?
It just was there. I should also add synchronicity and what a hoot God is. So the first thing that happened that caught my awareness wasn't a ghosty or an angel. Oh my gosh, my angel. Oh, and the children's near-death experiences and scary experiences that are within the near-death realm, and suicide and I have a lot to say. But how the traffic opened, the light went on when I decided to find, once I recovered, where mountains melt water, and I had a hamster by the name of Toto. I want to add too that I am from Kansas. I traveled out here with a hamster, but Toto. We had a tornado outside of Hayes, Kansas, and I wound up living in Seattle, which to this day, as then, is called the Emerald City. So I am Dorothy. But as Dorothy was leaving, I was terrified. I hated change, and I felt like I was being driven, and also an unseen being in the car. That was wild. I'll have so much to share. But anyway, there was a turnpike at that time, and I'm blubbering to God, I don't want to change. I don't want to change. I hate change. I don't want to change. And where there's a being in the car, and there's Toto tied up a little ball going, she doesn't know how to drive a stick shift, which is true. And then approaching the toll booth, there was a sign that said, change needed. And I just thought, funny, to get my Kleenex. Oh, funny. But that was the change. That was the traffic light. Very nice word. And thereafter, that being sailed all the way to Seattle. And last Saturday, Seattle Lions had an event with the producer of the Netflix show and the author of the book Surviving Death that the series is based on. And I'm in my office. At the end of the program, there was a being that I didn't even turn to look to see. I could see in my monitor like now, sitting on the couch, a big thing. And so it might have been what we call an angel, because the angels I've seen are huge. And it's like this, I got a male energy, and it was like if there was an ottoman, his invisible feet were up and he was smoking a cigar, that kind of a job well done thing. So it's just there. And if I see a dead person, they're just there. Always though, when I see the deceased, it's shortly after their death usually, and it's unfinished business, and I can help them because I'm a social worker for both sides, and I can help them finish their business, and that's an honor and a pleasure.
So cool. So cool.
Write a book.
Yes, yes. And that is the book that can you hold that up again for us? The book, this is available. If you want to hear more of her story, this is available on Amazon. So if you just search her name, Kimberly Park, you'll find
everything's in here, including all the things I talked about, the ghosties and the dead people. And I was going to be one of them. I had breast cancer at the time. The book finished before I knew I was even going to live. It's also funny. I talk exactly like I write exactly like I talk. This is my voice. And so don't think this is like a really serious book. I have a light touch and love that I'd like to think comes out of me and also the pages. So
beautiful. Thank you so much. And Amina, thank you so much for, she just posted the link to the Seattle IANS organization in the chat. So if you'd like to follow up on that as well, that's available. So thank you again. Thank you so much. You guys do give her a little hand applause in the mute off. There you go. Thank you so much. All right. So our next speaker, just a moment here, and I'll try to do my, okay. So our next speaker for today, and how awesome was that, by the way? Like super exciting to hear these stories, just mind blowing and wonderful and inspiring, right? Our next speaker is Jose Hernandez. And Jose was an electrical engineer, a self-described atheist and closed-minded skeptic when at age 46, he had a near-death experience. It changed his life dramatically, and he learned to embrace his experience in new life path. He began creating art as a way to share his experience and as a form of meditation. A profile of Jose's experience and work is also featured in the Netflix docuseries Surviving Death. Jose developed a breakthrough mindfulness practice, Inner Immersion, which is engineered to help others shed the layers which keep them from connecting to their true selves without words or dogma. Jose's transformational ascension art has exhibited in galleries across the US and Canada. His limited edition book, Ethereal, offers the readers a glimpse into the ineffable world beyond the veil. So please help me welcome Jose Hernandez.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. It's really a pleasure to meet you. It's strange how we all connect at one point or another in life. My grandmother's indigenous, so we would refer to this as all our relations.
Oh, nice.
It simply means everything that we make contact with during the course of life. So strangely, even if you meet somebody in a bus and you never see them again, they're intertwined into your life forever. And so we honor that.
Oh,
and
I love that.
It's really an honor to meet all of you. And, finding a tribe is not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
And getting past thoughts of people like who I was before, like all these guys are all crazy, they're insane, there's something wrong with them, they're reaching. And so it's really interesting how these things come to be, and it's really beautiful to find groups of people that are dedicated to bringing something else to life other than chaos and some of the insanity that we're going through right now.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. Anyway, I'm going to share a little of my story. My story started the day before Thanksgiving, 20 years ago, and I was running some electrical lines in a bucket truck. And because it was going to be Thanksgiving the next day, we wanted to rush. It was already getting dark out, and we had quite a bit of work left to do. And, you're looking forward to that 4-day weekend. We decided that we were going to be really smart and keep the bucket up and kind of maneuver so we could save the time of coming up and down. That would have saved us about an hour. Anyway, I didn't get electrocuted, nothing exotic. The driver was very concerned about that, so he was kind of watching me more than where he was going, and he bumped into a tree. And I hit the side of the bucket and I broke all the ribs on my left side. And actually it was my right side, sorry. Go to the hospital. They tape you up. They gave me some medication. And after a couple of weeks, they realized that I wasn't improving very much. So they included a medication that had an anti-inflammatory in it. And it's something that we take every day. It's ibuprofen. Anyway, it turns out I was allergic to it. So after I took the first dose, I called them up and I said, hey, you know, I'm really having some difficulty breathing. And then, you know, it's like, okay, you're all taped up. You can't take a deep breath anyway. It's normal. So I kept taking them and I slowly started to lose my ability to breathe. It kept getting lower and lower and lower. And they give you this little thing to blow into and it kind of measures how much air you got blowing out. By a couple of days after New Year's, and that was the year 2000. So if you can imagine all the craziness with the K2, you know, that K2 thing, that 2000 year, and everything was going to go crazy with the computers. I was kind of like completely disconnected from all that by this time. And anyway, I got below 125 on that thing. So they took me to the hospital, my ex-wife and my son at the time. And, you know, being a guy and growing up in New York City thinking, you know, we're tough and we're all this. I said, you guys go home. I'm going to be fine. This is nothing. And they did go home. And they finally took me into a little room in the emergency room because they were going to keep me. And the nurse says to me, here's this little button. If you need any help, just push the button. And anyway, she goes out, she closes the door. I'm looking at this little button, wondering, man, I should really push that button because I'm really struggling to breathe. Now you got IVs on and everything. They start giving you all these steroids and all this stuff. And, but I'm not getting any better. So keep looking at the button, And then I'm saying, no, I'm a guy. I can't push this button. I'm going to be okay. It's nothing. It's all in my head. Try to relax. And anyway, that went on for about 45 minutes. I finally pushed the button. Took about a minute for the nurse to get there, but that was like one of the longest minutes in my life. It felt like forever. She opened the door. She just looked at me. She just punched the cold blue on the wall. And the journey starts. The next thing I know, there's a bunch of people running into the room. You got this crash team coming in. And I'll explain this as a series of emotions because it's what I felt. So I'm hanging onto this sheet and they just pulled it off of me like nothing. And I felt so ashamed because I was so weak. I couldn't hold it. And then they were stripping me. So I felt shame for that. They put this board under me and then they lay me on it. And they start doing the CPR and everything. In my head, it's not really registering. So in my head, I'm going to be okay. It's just, you know, it's not real. And I don't really feel the danger yet or what it means. But as the process continued, I began to think about what if something does happen to me? And then I got this tremendous knot right in the middle of my chest, emotion. And I started thinking about my kids and everybody I loved. I started thinking about all those things that I didn't say, all those things that I didn't do that I wanted to do. And it mostly was interconnected with people that were in my life. You know, I had an argument with this person and I didn't settle it. We didn't make peace. And all those thoughts started to come in me and that emotion became so strong and I felt like I was just falling and falling. And I started thinking, being an atheist, I said, well, what if there is a God? Now, all this is happening very fast, but it feels like it's taking hours. And then I said, well, maybe there is a God. And if there's a God, what if I call him and maybe he could intervene? Now, I do. And I say, you know, God, if you're real, this is your chance to show me. But if you're real, I will change. If you intervene and get me out of this mess, I will change. I'll be a better person. I'll be more religious. I'll go to church. You know, it's crazy because when I was little, I had to go to church because my mother was Catholic. So it was a conflict. My father was God is everywhere, and my mother's God is in a church. So anyway, I took a path of science. I love math and science, so I went that route, and that's how I became an atheist. I didn't want to do one or the other, so I said, let me just stay neutral and whatever. But anyway, after about a minute, my heart is getting very irregular because it's starving for oxygen. There's no oxygen going in. And the thing about it is, when we think about breathing, we only think about taking a breath and taking a breath in, and we go, that's breathing, but it's only half. The other half is letting that go, so I could get new oxygen in. So I couldn't get the oxygen, the spent air out, and I couldn't get new air in. So it was, I don't know how it looked, but it must look pretty dramatic from the other people observing me, trying to get air in and trying to get air out. But anyway, my heart began to become very irregular, and it sounded like a horse galloping in my chest. And then I abandoned the concept of God. I said I knew there wasn't a God. What was I thinking? What was I doing? And at that moment, I saw a shadow by the door. It was really bright. The door looked really bright suddenly, and there was a shadow standing there. To me, it was a feminine energy. And then I started thinking, because my heart was stopping, and you feel that. And then you could hear that beep, your heart stops. You could hear that. So Kimberly is totally right. You hear a lot more than people think. I realized there was nothing I could do to stop this chain of events. So I couldn't save myself, in other words. It was, and I knew they couldn't either. And so I said to myself, you know what? I've had a really difficult life. I've had a really hard life. Maybe it's okay to die. There's no shame. I'm not quitting. Still had that guy mindset of I can't give up. I can't quit. And I said, I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. I just understand that I can't stop this from happening. The minute I thought that, the shadow begins to move. Now, I'm also experiencing a tremendous amount of fear because I don't believe in the afterlife. I don't believe in life after death. So what's going to happen to me? So I thought I was just going to be extinguished like a light bulb and just shut off and turn to nothing. That was a frightful thought. And anyway, the shadow begins to move around everybody, and then it reaches out and it touches me. When she touches me, I just feel this tremendous sense of peace and calm. And I could breathe again. I was okay. I was better than okay. I was euphoric. The sense of peace and love that just overcame me, just completely overwhelmed me. And it's hard to describe. You can't describe it. And then I felt like a breeze, a warm breeze just blowing. I got crazy long hair. So I'm seeing my hair blowing. I mean, I'm imagining my hair's blowing in this wind, and I'm so ecstatic. I'm so loving. And I feel it lifting me and lifting me and lifting me. The next thing I know, I'm in the corner of the room and I'm watching the CPR being done to me and the crash team working so hard to keep me alive. And I looked at myself and I said, that's me and I'm dead. And then this is the question, one of the questions that changed my life dramatically. And I asked myself, well, if that's me and I'm dead, then who am I? And I thought, everything that I need to be doing what I'm doing now is dead in my body, my brain, my eyes, everything that everything that I need is dead. And I heard a voice on my left, and she said to me, you have to think of your body as if it was a car. And your car has 5 million miles in it, and we can't fix it anymore. So you got to say goodbye to your body now. And I will say this was the second galvanizing moment, because I learned so much from my experience of dying. It's crazy how much you learn even there. I looked at my body, and for the first time, I felt so much love for it. And I recall when I was in life, it was never good enough. I was always this, always that. I got this spot, I got this, I got that. I was always something wrong with me. I was never happy with who I had been. And I realized for the first time what a beautiful vessel that had been to allow me to live in it for all that time and experience this physical life. And I started getting these images in my head of when I was 4 years old and my brother was 2 and I was holding his hand and taking a breath of air and seeing the sunrise and seeing all these benign things that we see every day, every minute of our lives, and how I never thought of it and how I never appreciated it. And, you know, seeing a tree, seeing everything that we see, all this amazing stuff we see and experience every day, never thought of it because I was too busy trying to make money or too busy trying to fit into life or compete with everybody else. And made me realize how beautiful my life had been and how beautiful my body had been and how perfect it was. And it gave me the most peaceful experience, understanding how beautiful I had been, even though I always thought of myself being so ugly and so imperfect. What a contrast. As soon as I had that experience, the voice says to me, we got to go. And we started walking. And there was this big black hole in front of me and I fell in and I felt this ripping and tearing. I landed, hit bottom, and she says, no, we got to keep going. And there was another space and I fell in that. And the same thing, this ripping. And when I hit bottom, I had an understanding that was being torn off of me was all these painful moments, all this pain, this fear, all these things that I had experienced in life that were negative. But I say negative, but essential to me because it made me who I was. So it had to be part of my life. And I realized all that had been peeled off of me. And I understood that for me to continue this journey, I had to be I had to be spiritual. I had to be only love. I only had to have these positive feelings. And I remember when I looked around, I was floating in the middle of a ball. If you could visualize that. And I'm in the middle of this ball of color all around me. And this color is alive and it's talking to me. And I hear like a million voices like, shh. And then either the ball is coming towards me or I'm moving towards the color. But the next thing I know, I'm in the color and I become the color. And my experience of that was so amazing. So much acceptance. I was so accepted, so loved, so peaceful. So it's like being a baby and being held and having that experience of being so cuddled and loved. And it gave me a recipe of how to paint. I never painted in my life, but when I left and I came back, somehow I could paint. But there's where I got that recipe, the blueprint, I call it. Anyway, I come out on the other side of the color and I see this amazing landscape. Now, I grew up in New York City, so the mountains and the forest that I saw and all these wildlife running around was quite contrasting to how I lived. And then I lived in South Florida, of course, which is flat. So I remember moving through the space and everything that I came near, I became. So if I went near a tree, I became that tree. I could feel it nurturing itself from the land. If I came near stone, I became the stone. If I went the air, I became the air. I became everything that I was there to see. It made me learn the concept of being one. There's where I learned what being one really is. I keep going. Eventually, I get to the space where I see the sun, see the rising or setting, it didn't matter. But I could see it as if I was looking through a telescope and I could see these flares coming off of it. Then I look to my right and I see a cove and a beach. And there's a man. I see him knee deep in the water with got his right hand out. There's 6 kids in a chain and then one child holding his left hand. And I said, let me go see what that's about. And I go down and I'm about 10 or 15 feet away When I get to him, he turns around and it's my father, who had died 5 years before. And the joy that I felt of seeing my dad, because we had such a bumpy relationship, he and I. And this was going to be the space where I was going to tell my dad, Dad, I love you. I care about you. I don't know why we never did this in life. And we were going to hug for the first time. He had this sense that men don't do that. So he made us tough and almost emotionless. And I was going to be able to now do what I couldn't do in life. And I'll never forget this. This is so important. When we hugged, I became my dad. And when I became my dad, I knew everything he thought and he felt. And I realized how much he loved me and how he was proud of me. And he was all this thing. And he knew that I loved him because he became me. That became the most powerful moment of my near-death experience. Because in it, I learned to forgive. And it wasn't about me forgiving him and him forgiving me, because I understood how our lives were at that moment. I lived his and he lived mine. It was about forgiving myself. And the freedom that created, even there. So anyway, he looked at me and he said, you got to go back. And I said, no, I don't want to. That went on for a bit. Finally, he said to me, if you go back, I promise when your time comes, I'll go get you. And I said, okay, that sounds like a good deal. I come back, I'm in body. And that begins the second journey of my life. I was in the hospital for 90 days almost. Very difficult. You know, the prognosis is you'll never leave here alive. Every time that they hit a cold blue, I said, that's going to be me again soon. And what I did was I'd escape to that ball of color. And I found refuge and safety there. And I slowly began to heal. I got out of hospital. I thought I was crazy. I went to see psychiatrists for 5 years. And finally met one that introduced me to ions and that told me you got to keep 1 foot here and 1 foot there. And I learned how to balance my life spiritually and physically. And it created a peace. And I learned to adapt all these things that I talked about, the experiences I had, into my world. And that's where I am now. So that's my experience. The second half is just way too long to express here. But, you know, I think the lesson is that we are special. I don't believe in angels. I believe we're all angels. We all play the role of angels one way or another. And, you know, we become that. We always are that. So I know angels have entered my life in the form of many people and many spiritual beings. So I have an understanding of that from my perspective. That's only my perspective. So anyway, that's kind of my story. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Just beautiful. Thank you. Everybody in the chat is saying how touched they are by your story. It is really, like, I definitely teared up a little bit there as you were talking about it. I have to ask, is that one of your pieces on the wall behind you, your art? I understand that you paint what you saw. I see a color behind you. Is that one of your art pieces?
Yeah, that is.
Can you angle the camera so we can see it a little better?
Let's see if you can see it. Can you see it?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's gorgeous.
So that painting is called Strand. So that strand in the middle is what connects me to source, to creator, to God, whatever we believe in.
Yeah.
It's how I never get lost on my journey. I can't get lost. Spirit knows where to bring me back. It knows how. We have a pathway, a roadmap that takes us back home. But it also keeps me connected to the spiritual world, even when I'm physical. Even if I don't believe, like I didn't believe till I was 40, after I was 46 in spirit. Even though I didn't believe, it doesn't mean that is not still connected to me. I have to go back to source, and that's what that is. So anyway, the paintings are really engineered to become a portal for me to go back to where I came from.
Super
Is that a
cool.
question?
drawn several days prior to that appointment.
Oopsie. Oh, I think
Okay.
someone has their thing muted. I'll find that. But
Okay.
thank you so much, Jose. And Amina, thank you so much. She just posted your site, innerimmersion.org, is in the chat. So if you want to see more of Jose's art, it's available there. So thank you. That was a beautiful story. So if everybody give him a little bit of love
you,
here. We
everyone.
appreciate it very much. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
everyone.
Jose. Beautiful story. All right. But this is fun. I'm so glad we're doing this. Just amazing and inspiring stories. All right. Our next speaker is Barbara, and I'm going to mess it up. Barbara Bartolome. No, Bartolome. Did I get it? Wait. I think you're muted. Wait, do it again. You're muted. You're still muted, Barbara.
I have a very tall husband. He's 7 feet tall, guys, and he played for Golden State Warriors. So I'm the Barbara of Bartolome.
Oh,
The tall part of the
that
Bartolome.
helps so much. Okay, now I'm there. I needed a little mnemonic device.
Bartolome. Yeah, that's it.
Bartolome. I'm so there. Thank you.
Yes. Well, hello, everybody from Santa Barbara.
And then you as
I
well.
run the IANS group in Santa Barbara, actually. And I
Yes.
founded it almost 10 years ago. So I'm very good friends with Jose and with Kim and with Terry Yoder. And so a lot of the NDers are all my family. And so when I was 31 years old, which was less than 33 years ago, so I was married to someone who wasn't my husband now. And it was a very traumatic situation because he was an engineer here in Santa Barbara, and he had anger issues. And so I was trying really hard as a young person to try to, keep everything okay and not have him explode. And I had an 8-year-old son, and I had a baby daughter, a little 3-month-old baby daughter. And what ended up happening, short story of all, is that I injured my back and I had to have surgery. So the doctors wanted to do a myelogram, which is an injection of iodine dye they were going to put it into the base of my neck the night before the surgery and do a myelogram where they had me on an x-ray table and they checked to see if the dye, when they lifted my head and lowered my feet, when the dye ran down my spinal cord, when my disc blew out, if chips of my disc had chipped the spinal cord and was leaking fluid. So that would have changed the surgical stuff that they did the next day. So this was a final test. And so they told me after they injected the dye that I needed to hold very still because I would have headaches for weeks afterwards if I didn't. And I thought, baby and an 8-year-old headache, so I don't think I'm going to do that. So I'm holding very still, and they tipped the table, and everything started feeling really funny the second they started tipping it. And I didn't want to intervene with the conversation that was happening with the 2 x-ray techs. And so I just kept quiet while they tipped the table, and things felt very bizarre. And finally, at one point, my eyes started rolling backwards within a minute or a minute and a half of the situation with the table tipping. And then pretty quickly after that, I started hyperventilating. So I realized that I couldn't reach out and touch them, but they heard me hyperventilating. So they stopped talking. They looked at me, and that was the last thing that I saw. The guy kind of leaned back, he looked at me, and then he leaned back and he looked to see where his thumb was on the x-ray table, realizing something was wrong, but he didn't know what. And then he saw that his thumb was on the wrong button on the x-ray table. Instead of raising my head, they had been lowering my head. So the dye that they'd injected into the back of my neck had gone right into my brain. So I died on the x-ray table. 1 second I'm in my body, feeling panicked. Oh my God, what's going on? I don't know what's happening. And the next second, I'm up above my body, looking down at the whole scene. And literally my words were, if I'm up here and my body is down there and he's calling code blue, I think I just died. And immediately in that moment, there was a presence that was next to me. And as Kim said, you can call it Bubba, you can call it God, you can call, he doesn't care. But the loving kindness and absolute warmth and just, I felt like I was wrapped in a beautifully warm love blanket. And I felt him there, and I felt as though I knew him from way before this life, back when I was probably at home. Like Kim said, home is where we come from, and home is where we return to when we die. So it felt as though I had this connection forever with this being, and I'd known him forever, and I would know him beyond forever in the future. And so I started to talk to him and said, I really need to go back into my life, because if I leave at this time and I leave my children to face the traumas that my husband will apply to them, they will not grow up to be the good human beings that they're capable of being. I need to be there to support them through this. Please help me. I need to go back. So down below, they're doing CPR. They're blowing into my mouth. An oxygen cart is brought in. They stop blowing into my mouth. They hook up the oxygen cart. The doctors are yelling at the team. It sounds loud and noisy. It's obnoxious. I actually, I'm watching it, but it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on down there? And at one point, this man comes in and he brings in this small box and he sets it on a shelf that's behind the x-ray table, and he's standing between the x-ray table and the wall. And he starts to peel these little white round things and put them on my chest. Well, I've never been a TV watcher, and so I didn't know what this was. You guys would probably recognize it's a heart monitor, and those are the heart monitor connections. Well, I didn't know that, and at 31 years old, I had no clue. So I stopped talking to the being about wanting to go back, and I said to him, what is that he's doing? Because I understood everything else that was going on down below, but what was that? And so right then I was moved down in front of the box so that it was right in front of my vision. And I watched as the man who had been putting the white things on, his hand went across my vision between the box and myself, and he flicked a toggle switch. And this little area at the top of the box was a green glass screen, and this white dot lit up, and it started going in a straight line across the screen, and the box started making this monotone sound. Well, I still didn't know what it was. And so it's going beep, and I'm going, and so walk goes all the way across, it goes a second time across, and the third time it starts to go across, all of a sudden I went, oh, that's my heart, it stopped. So I actually watched my own flat line. And the second that I said, oh, that's my heart, it stopped, I was back up on the ceiling again with the being, watching everything from above. I continued to say that I wanted to go back into my life. Down below, the neurosurgeon who was present and the orthopedic surgeon had been just barking out orders, but now the neurosurgeon spoke to the orthopedic surgeon and said, too much time has passed, she's going to be brain dead, we need to do something. So the orthopedic surgeon said, stand clear, and the x-ray techs and the nurse that were at the front of the table near my chest area, they stepped back, and he stepped 2 steps forward, swung his fist from behind his back, and came down and pounded the center of my chest. And that's called a precardial thump. So that's done only in last ditch effort to try to restart the heart with a blow to it that will shock it. And the blow did not restart my heart. But when that blow occurred, the being that I had been speaking to, I finally heard him speak to me. And what he said was, in this beautifully calm, gentle voice, but if you go back, you'll still be in your marriage. What will you do? And then I was shown all these little film clips that just flash, 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 flash. that were all of the incidents where my husband had exploded and hit me or kicked me or grabbed the children, or anything I had tried to deal with him were all shown to me. And I had been, or during the course of the time with him, he'd always, apologize afterwards and take me out to dinner or something, or buy the kids something or something to apologize. And he would say he would never do it again, but he would always do it again. And never could tell when, but it would happen. So I saw these little incidents, and then I was given all the time to establish, like, what had I done to try to change this situation? And I looked and evaluated. I'd cried, I begged, I pleaded. I'd written him a letter that said, please don't hit us. Please don't do this. I'd taken him to a marriage family counselor. He'd rejected it after 4 sessions. I'd taken him to a pastor of a church. Same thing, rejected it. I had done everything I could possibly do. And I saw that up above and out of my body. And I said to the being, if you let me go back, I promise you, I will get strong enough to leave him. The second I said the word him, the doctor did a second blow to my chest, and literally my eyes shut from up above, and I was back in my body and opened my eyes and looked at the orthopedic surgeon, and he was only an arm's length away from me. And I spoke into the oxygen mask and said, what just happened? I'd never heard of a near-death experience. I was not a meditator. I did not know anything about that. I believed in God. I believed in angels, but it wasn't like it was just all so abruptly thrown at me. I had no idea what to think. And so the nurse leaned over me and said, stop, don't talk. We need to stabilize you. So 20 minutes later, when they took that oxygen mask off, I said, what just happened? I was up on the ceiling and I could see and hear everything that you were doing to resuscitate me. And the neurosurgeon standing next to the table said, oh, brother. And that was actually a good thing, because although it was rude, that caused me to then completely say, she brought in the oxygen card. That man had the heart monitor. I watched it flatlining. Those 2 men were doing CPR on me. And when the oxygen card came in, they stopped. Then you said to him, la, 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 la. And so I recounted everything that had just happened. And I validated the whole thing, which I shouldn't have been able to see or hear anything with my heart stopped. And, 10 minutes into having my heart stopped. So what ended up happening was that I kept it all inside me, because at the hospital after that happened, no one wanted to talk to me about it. They wheeled me up to a room. They did the surgery the next day, and not a single person would answer any of my questions. No one told me it was called a near-death experience. I had no idea. There was no internet to look it up. I had no idea what to do. And when I talked with my husband at the time, he said, oh, that couldn't have happened. You probably hallucinated it. So I just internalized it for about 12 years. And one day I was sitting at gymnastics practice with that little 3-month-old baby, who was now 12 years old. And she was in her gymnastics, and a nurse was sitting next to me, and her mom was dying, and she was telling me about it. And I realized that my near-death experience, I didn't even know what it was called yet. I realized that my story could help her. So I told her my story. And she's the one who opened it up and said, well, that's called a near-death experience. And I've actually witnessed people in the hospital have that situation and come out of it and talk about it. So it's something common, and it's online. You can look it up, and now we have internet. So I looked it up, and I found the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, and I briefly wrote up my NDE, because they have a whole bunch of them listed there that you can read. And so I wrote it up, and about 2 years later, the person who runs that organization, Dr. Jeffrey Long, called me and said there was a conference in San Diego that I could go to, and he was going to attend with his wife. Would we like to all meet up there so that I could get a chance to meet other near-death experiencers? Of course, I wanted to do that, so I went. The surprising thing that happened at that conference was that the very first night they were talking about the after effects that near-death experiencers clearly show across the board, which is one of them is intuition, and another one is hating loud noises or very bright lights. And all those, as they were talking about them, I'd never heard of them before. And it was just a group of the researchers and the doctor that had invited me to go. When I was standing there with some high level people. And I was identifying with everything that they were saying, but I was identifying with it all the way back to my early childhood. And that was very odd to me, because why would I have the after effects before I had the near-death experience? So I turned, after they kind of stopped talking in a group, they kind of turned to each other and they were talking. And a lady was standing next to me. It happened to be a woman who had written about 8 books on near-death experiences. Her name is PMH Atwater. She's very, very amazing researcher. I didn't know her. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Why would I have the after effects way all the way back to my childhood if I didn't have my near-death experience till I was 31 years old? She took my hands really calmly and she said, I think you should talk to your family, because something may have happened to you when you were young that you haven't been told about. And I have to admit, at this time, and I've admitted it directly to her, I thought, oh brother, these people think I've had more than one of these. And so I like, oh my God. And so what ended up happening was, I was talking to my older brother, who's 10 years older than me, and I didn't want to tell him about my near-death experience. I hadn't told anybody in my family. So I told him, hey, Brad, I'm doing a complete medical review of my whole life and all of my things that have happened to me, so that I'm putting them in a book, so that in case anything happens, I can have that to take a binder to take with me to the hospital or something. And he said, oh, that's a great idea. And so I said, well, is there anything that you can remember other than this, this, and this in my early childhood? And he said, I'll have to think about that. And then he came to me and he said, hey, there is something that happened to you, and we were told not to talk to you about it. So it turns out that when I was 18 months old, I had a very high fever. He doesn't remember what it was that I was sick with, measles, mumps, I don't know what. And he said that my mom was caring for me, and what ended up happening was that I had my heart stopped, and I ended up being put into a bath of tepid water, and he was sent off to the neighbor's house to go get more ice cubes, and they were to slowly lower my body temperature, is what the fire department had told my parents to do while they sent the ambulance over. And he said that when he came back from the neighbor's house with the bag of ice and handed it to my mom, who was sobbing over the bathtub, and my father was in talking to the fire department on the phone, panicking, he said, while I was watching you, went from soft purple and lifeless in the bathtub with mom holding you. He said, all of a sudden you took a breath and you arched your back backwards. And he said, when you got the breath in, he said, you changed back to red again, like you had been before you died. And he said, you then started crying and you were bright red, and the ambulance people came rushing in, took you off to the hospital. You were there for 4 days. He said, then we were told never to talk to you about it and never to disclose this to you. So that was such a huge gift for me, because all through my early childhood, I had massive situations where I had knowledge of what was going to happen next, and I had to learn to not talk about it and not say anything, because it would freak people out so much. My mom especially would be freaked out. And so now I really understand all of it, and I feel so grateful for the gifts that those NDEs gave me, because I have had my life saved by the situation where I have been able to hear from the other side telling me and warning me that a big semi truck turned over way ahead on the freeway, and we were actually diverted from hitting that semi truck. Thank you. We were actually diverted from hitting that semi truck by someone on the other side telling me that there was danger ahead, that I needed to slow down. So, the other side is there, and whatever you want to call it is up to you. But I really want everyone to understand that once you understand that they're there, that you connect with them and you say thank you for the things that they give to you, they are so connected to you and they will speak with you. And I have had the most amazing experiences with them telling me something that was going to happen, and my life being changed in a positive way because of what was going to happen. So I can tell you that, connecting with them and thanking them And understanding that they're there will benefit your life in a million ways. So whether you call them angels or whether you call it God, or I believe in all of it, and I love all of them, and I thank them all for everything that they've done in my life to be this amazing redhead that I get to be in Santa Barbara, California. So I just want to thank you for inviting me to talk today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you. Everybody give her a little bit of love there. That was an awesome story. And I'm so glad you were able to fit in the story about the semi truck, because that's so dramatic. I got the full version of that when Barbara and I talked on the phone, and it's pretty astounding that she knew this was, if she had been going any faster, not only would she be dead, but so would the people who were in the truck, as well as the police officer, right? Would have all been dead. But
Yes.
gotten the message,
Yeah,
slow down.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience, and many other experiences with me being pregnant with the baby and being told that I was going to have an 11-pound baby, and I actually ended up having, believe it or not, with that 7-foot husband, an 11-pound baby, and he almost died at birth because the doctor did not listen to me. And I finally told him, I'm a near-death experiencer. I'm telling you the truth. I got this information and I'm having an 11-pound baby. And he ended up doing a vaginal delivery instead of a C-section. And the baby was so huge. The doctor turned to me in midst delivery and said, I'm going to have to break its shoulders to get it out.
Oh.
And I sent the big prayer up, and the shoulders weren't broken. And he's now 26 years old and 6'6" and 240 pounds. My big baby. So, understanding that they're there, that they want to help us, and asking for help, and then listening and believing that they're there. That is the biggest thing I can give to you all. I can just tell you that changes your life completely.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you. It's a beautiful, beautiful, amazing story, of course. Amazing. Thank you. All right. We've got our next speaker is Terry Yoder. And Terry is an internationally known psychic medium and tarot card counselor. He opened to his psychic gifts in a near-death experience early in his life. Since the beginning of his practice in 1984, he has helped thousands of clients from all corners of the world. He has hosted and been hosted on a number of radio and television programs, as well as featured in the beautiful documentary Beyond Our Sight. And Terry, let me go ahead and bring you in here. Hello, Terry. Welcome to the group. And I think you're muted. Let me unmute you. I think you need to unmute you. There you go.
Hello.
Great to see you, Terry.
Nice to see you. Learning Zoom. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Well, I've had 3 near-death experiences, but I do not consider myself in any way an expert about near-death experiences. My first near-death experience was when I was born. I was born March 18th, 1965 in Richmond, Indiana, and I was born 2 months premature. My mother contracted toxemia, and they had to take me. At the time of my birth, they told my father that it could be me or my mother or both of us who passed, but not everybody would make it. As a matter of fact, being born 2 months early, one of the mementos that my parents gave me is the little bracelet that they put on you at the hospital. I was so tiny, weighing only 3 pounds, if you can believe that, that they had to put that little strip of plastic as high on my thigh as they could get it. And I actually went and got it. It's that big. You can barely fit a dime through it. It's so small. So I don't remember much about that experience, obviously, because I was just born. The only thing I remember from that experience is I do remember the first time I ever saw my first glimpse of light. And I remember the color of the wall. It was this odd green, avocado green, institutional green that they used in the 60s. And I remember the lights, and I remember the doctors with the blue caps and the masks. I do remember that from the time I was born. Nothing else from that actually stands out. I was raised in East Central Indiana as a very sensitive, gay, psychic person, and it wasn't an overwhelmingly joyful experience. It was a very, very hard childhood, very lonely childhood for me. And I really didn't have any friends, and I really had very little self-esteem. I was kind of raised rough and tumble. And by the time I was 14, I finally made a friend, and that friend taught me how to huff gasoline. So that was a wonderful experience and escape. So I started doing it all the time. So Memorial Day weekend, 1979, it was actually the Sunday before Memorial Day. I was in the garage by myself, kicked back on the lawn tractor and huffing gasoline, getting very, very high. And I had been doing that for about 2 hours. And the next thing I knew, I was up floating behind my body. And I was getting further and further and further and further away from my body. And just as I could feel like I was about ready to go through the garage roof, I heard a voice say, "You can let go and come with me." But something didn't feel right about that. And I still was moving backwards. And at that very moment, my father flipped up the garage door and I was smacked back into my body. My father was horrified. They didn't take me to the hospital because there was too much shame around what I had done. And I was in a lot of trouble. My parents really didn't know what to do with me. Sorry, we just had an earthquake. We're having an earthquake. Immediately after that, within the next 2 days, I started realizing that every blade of grass, every leaf on every tree, every bean, everything that is, has a golden aura around it, a very thin layer of golden light. I'm like, wow, something's up. Something's different. Not long after, they shipped me off to my grandmother in Arizona for her to deal with me, and which was great because grandma was fun. Grandma was all into psychic stuff and very supportive of me as a person. So I went and spent the summer with my grandmother in Arizona. It's that summer that I actually had my first relationship. And at the end of that summer, within a 3-month period, I was shipped back home. We had new neighbors who had moved in next door, and they were Pentecostal. So here I've had a near-death experience. I've made the realization about who I am as a sexual being, and now I have Pentecostal neighbors who are beckoning me to go to church with them, and I did. And on September 7th, 1979, I had a very powerful spiritual experience where I gave my life to Christ and received the baptism of the Holy Spirit, started speaking in languages that I didn't understand, got knocked to the floor, etc. All of that, summing up, that near-death experience at 14 kind of kicked me into a place of realizing that I had worth and value. It activated my spiritual gifts because while I was at grandma's house, I found a deck of tarot cards and they came to life for me. My grandmother said, "It's frightening that you know the things that you know. And these are things that have actually happened, but we don't discuss these things in the family." So I was kind of introduced to the fact that I needed to learn tact in my spiritual gifts. And I began using the cards and they became coming more and more real to me. I was feeling myself, knowing things, feeling things, understanding things. But you all, when I went to the spiritual experience in the church, it expanded. And I teach, it's all the same thing. It's just called something different. And so now people ask me what my spiritual affiliation is, and I say, whatever works. Whatever works, whatever you want to call it, whatever works is what I accept, what I adopt. So I went on through my life and I became a travel agent, and I was a travel agent for many years. And in 1984, I started, I mentioned to somebody that I read cards at work, and oh, I'd love to have a reading. So she came over and I did my first reading for the public and for her and a friend of hers that she brought with her. Well, the friend told me, you should go over to this bookstore, Mountaintop Bookstore in Dayton, Ohio, and do readings there. So I did. And by the age of 20, I was teaching tarot and forming a spiritual practice. I was travel agent by day, psychic by night for many, many years. And eventually I just moved into private practice back in Ohio. In 1997, I moved to California. I had to go back into the working world, the corporate world, for a period of time. And while I did, I was building my clientele here. In 2001, I went totally self-employed here in California, doing just my readings. I got so busy and so focused on work and being of service that my life balance completely went off kilter. And everyone who was coming into my office, thank you, was saying, what do you do to take care of yourself? Nothing. So on July 6th, 2006, I was coming home from a psychic fair in Fresno, California. I was told that morning not to go because I would be in an accident, and I negotiated. I slept for another 3 hours and decided to go late. I went, and coming home, I sneezed 14 times very rapidly, coming down a hill, and passed out behind the wheel, crossed the yellow line, and hit a 19-year-old kid in a Toyota Camry at 72 miles an hour head on. I went out of my body. I floated in the most vibrant green light that I've ever seen in my life. My life reviewed in 3 seconds flat. And I put my hands up and said, Spirit, take my soul. It ends up, that's the only thing that saved my life. In that experience, I didn't even know I'd been in an accident. When I came back into my body, I was trying to push on the gas, and I looked down and my foot's flipped backwards. Oh, I'm impaled on the dash with my knee. Oh, my arm is broken. I have broken ribs and I'm trapped in the car. Many people tried to get me out of the car. They couldn't. And in the midst of that, there was a fellow who came and helped me, who's in the physical world, who I've actually met. But there was another guy, every time he would walk away, who would be off at a distance. Finally, this guy comes right over to my window and says, Terry, my name is Ben, and I've come to be with you in this moment so that you don't have to have this experience alone. May I touch you? And I said, yes. And he put his hand on my heart, and I went completely limp. And he says, Terry, the only thing that you need to know moving forward from this experience is that you will heal, and so will the man in the car. You will both be fine. You have nothing to worry about. He repeated that about 3 times, and the ambulances started pulling up. And as they did, he took a few steps back and said, I have to go now, and vanished right in front of my face. and I knew that I had just had an experience with an angel. It expanded my practice. It expanded my sensitivity. It expanded my intuition. It moved me. It gave me the ability to move and release through some things in my life that were really holding me back. Relationships, connections, and issues with clients. It completely changed and transformed my life. I experienced these near-death experiences as nudges to move me in the right direction and get me on the absolute rightful path, to bring light and understanding and show me there's a direction, there's movement forward for you. So that's my experience. So today I work with people from all over the world. My practice has literally become global via Zoom, and it is an absolute love, joy, and delight to be of service.
So cool. Thank you so much, Terry. I think that was amazing, especially that the third time around, man, you really, sounds like they really meant it that time.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I have had a session with Terry before and can tell you that he rocks. He's really, really good. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Terry. That's definitely inspiring.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you. All right. And we have, and thank you, Amina, for just posting Terry's website on the chat. I appreciate that very much. All right, and we have one more speaker today to share her story with us, and this is Wendy Rose Williams, who many of you know. Wendy has had not one, but two near-death experiences, which were part of her rapid spiritual awakening. She's now a hypnotherapist, Reiki master energy healer, certified spiritual teacher, and is certified for past life regression healing. She experienced stunning physical and emotional breakthroughs from her own past life regressions and other healing work, including releasing a decade-long battle with debilitating chronic pain and mobility issues. The remarkable difference in Wendy's quality of life from healing her own past parallel lives inspired her to help others release pain, anxiety, depression, and other energy that no longer serves them. So I'd love to welcome Wendy as our speaker.
Well, Anne, thanks so much for having me. I've just so been enjoying these stories and experiences because you can just hear the richness and how every time the person tells the story, it's like there's more information and more knowledge and more love just comes through. So it's just wonderful.
Thank you.
So what happened for me was in August of 1997, I was newly pregnant. I was 10 weeks pregnant and very excited. My husband and I were thrilled because it had been years of infertility, and I'd also had 2 ectopic pregnancies. So we're just over the moon. And I'd been to the OBGYN just one time because early in the pregnancy, but I just did not feel right. I just was having an incredible amount of heartburn, which seemed very odd to me so early in the pregnancy, but you know, every pregnancy can be different. And the other thing that was going on leading right up to the NDEs, which both occurred in the same week, was I was having these strange dreams. And that was really unusual for me because I didn't normally remember my dreams at all at the time. And I kept having the same dream almost every night. And I didn't know the concept of premonitions coming in through dreams at that time. And what would happen in the dream was it would just be this very violent storm at sea. And I would see this big ship just get ripping and tearing to pieces. And the masts would tear out, and even the winches would be torn off the boat, which I thought was very strange for a boat that just to, you know, be torn apart like that, and it would then sink. And I just don't know what to do with this. I'm thinking, pregnancy hormones, really? You know, what does that mean that the ship keeps going down? So I'm working at home one day. I worked full time, but from home. And I'm trying to work, but I just don't feel right. I've just got this impending sense of doom that was just really unusual for me and did not make sense. and I'm trying to work, but then I just feel nauseous and I feel like I'm going to throw up. So I'm in the bathroom, but I don't ever throw up. And then I'm like trying to lay on the bed, but I can't get comfortable. And this just continues on. I'm home alone, no car. My husband's at work, and we had an 18-month-old, and our nanny was at the park with our daughter. So no one's home. And I go into the bathroom one more time, and this excruciating pain, just the worst pain of my life, suddenly just bursts into my abdomen, and I feel something burst. I feel something tear. I feel something give way, just like that ship going down. And I look down at my abdomen in surprise, because I'm like, someone stuck a knife in me. It's the only way I can describe this. And I pass out on the floor. And I've never passed out in my life. I've, before or since, so this was really unusual and surprising. And when I came to, I'm laying on the floor, and I'm just fetal position, so much pain, just curled up, trying to protect my abdomen. I just can't move, can't straighten up. And the entire bathroom is just filled with this light like I've never seen. And I sensed angels, and they were so big, like, I don't know, 9 to 10 feet tall. It just was amazing. And I go into my left brain a little bit, and I'm like, oh, I wasn't really sure angels were real before. Well, now I know they are, because my bathroom is filled with them. And one of the angels spoke to me, and it was a male voice, very calm, but very direct. And he said, you need to call for help now, or you're going to go home. And I knew exactly what he meant. And I told him, I can't walk. I can't possibly walk to the phone. How am I going to get to the phone, even though it was not far at all? And he said, all you need to do is be willing to get up on your hands and knees, and we'll help you. So I managed to get up on my hands and knees. And from there, it was like flying. It was like being lifted. I'm like suddenly in front of my nightstand, which is, had just been a few feet away in the master bedroom, and I'm calling for help. I don't even think to call 911. I'd never called 911, and the angel said, call for help. So I called my husband at work, because he worked 5 minutes from home, and there the miracles continue. I don't think I've ever reached my husband at work. And I just told him, you need to come home right now. I need to go to the hospital. I need to go to the hospital right now. And he didn't say anything other than, I'll be right there. I thought, thank you for not making me go through an explanation, because I need to be at the hospital right now. And I then called the OBGYN office, and they said, as soon as you come to, and their office was right at the hospital, which was perfect. They said, as soon as you get here, don't park the car, just pull up and let us know you're there, and we're going to meet you with the wheelchair. It's really important that you don't walk at this point. And I'm like, okay. So obviously I have to get out of the house and get into my husband's car. But other than that, I did exactly what they said. And we were at the hospital in 15 minutes, and they took me into the OBGYN office. We go straight into an ultrasound room. And it took both my husband and the ultrasonographer to get me up on the exam table, because I am just like so bent over with pain, just so crunched up in that wheelchair. So they get me up on the exam table, and I'm like finally able to, get my legs down a little bit so that they can do the ultrasound of my abdomen. And I'm looking at the screen, and we had an 18-month-old. I'd had several ultrasounds before. So I had some idea of how you could, see organs and, see things on the ultra. And I'm looking at it, and all I see on the screen is black. So I look at the ultrasonographer, and I'm like, did you start yet? Is your machine working? And I saw her face, and she just she's keeping a good game face on, but she just, touches me gently on the shoulder or the arm or whatever. And she says, I'll be right back. And she left the room, and I heard her run. I heard her break into a run as soon as she was out of our sight, out of the room. And I'm just kind of looking at my husband, and he's like, it's okay, just take a breath. We're both just trying to breathe. And she returns very quickly with an OBGYN physician as well as with a midwife. And the OB takes one look at the screen, and he tries to make an adjustment, and they can't visualize a thing. And what it was there was just so much blood pouring out that you couldn't see any of the organs. So he lets me know, we need to take you straight up onto the floors. We need to admit you to the hospital. I said, I understand. And they get a stretcher. They don't even want to take me by wheelchair. So they get me on a stretcher and take me onto the floor. And we don't have any idea. Clearly, I've got a major blood loss going on, but we, don't know where it's coming from or what's happening. So I'm put into the hospital bed. They asked me if I know my blood type. I said, yes, it's A negative. I can hear someone go out and call, and they're trying to get blood from the blood bank. And evidently, I learned later, because there was a real delay in getting that first bag of blood hung. And I learned later there'd been a major train accident a few days before, and they were having trouble getting blood for me from the blood bank. So I'm laying in the hospital bed, and my abdomen is just distending and distending. And I'm like, what's going on here? I'm clearly not miscarrying. There's no blood coming out vaginally. There's, some other blood loss going on. And what they do at that point, we do finally get some blood arrives and is transfused, and it is so uncomfortable. No matter what they do with that IV, I was in tears, I was whining, I was crying. I've had IVs before. I have never had an IV hurt like that, but I guess they just really needed to get so much blood in as quickly as they could. It just was, cranked all the way on full. So I have to be put, they're trying different pain relievers, and I have to be put on morphine, which I'm arguing about. I'm like, hello, I'm pregnant, in case anyone's forgotten this fact. And I'm being transfused, and all these things you don't want to be happening, obviously, during a pregnancy, but there's no choice. So the OBGYN tells me that very first day in the hospital, I want to do surgery. We need to do surgery. We need to see what's going on. We need to stop the bleeding. And I just looked him straight in the eye and repeated, so stubborn. Hey, I'm pregnant. Like my OB doesn't know this. I'm pregnant, and what are you going to operate on? What are we doing? What's the surgical procedure? And he said, I can't tell you until we get in there and see, what's ruptured and what's going on. So I said, no. I said, I'm not, at that point. Thank you, Anne. So he agrees, and we agree we're going to wait and watch. And we do that for a few days, but I'm losing too much blood. We keep transfusing, but I'm losing too much blood. So on about day 3, we go ahead and do the surgery. But the night before, I'm just trying to relax after dinner. I'm just trying to gather my strength. I'm just totally out of gas, so exhausted. What happens is, as I relax and try and just visualize a good surgery the next day, I go completely out of my body, float up to the ceiling, and I'm looking back at my body thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so good. It is so great to be out of that, painful, conflicted little body. And I'm feeling fantastic. And I noticed I started referring to myself as she. And I'm looking back going, wow, she is whiter than a ghost. And couldn't they have at least brushed her hair? She looks like a wreck. So I'm kind of having this humorous moment too. Float up through the ceiling. And I look up and I see this white light. And I have this quick thought, oh, please don't make me walk through a tunnel. I am too exhausted. So immediately this pristine escalator appears and I ride up on the escalator, up and up and up, feeling fantastic and so relieved and so great to be me again. I just really, not relating to that body, even though I knew it used to be me or maybe still was me. So I go all the way up to the top of this escalator, and there at the top is this welcome home party. And it's this welcome home group. And the angels were there. Both sets of grandparents were there. There are about 20 different beings of light. And I am thrilled. And what one of the angels told me was, you've got a choice. And you can choose to go back, or you're welcome to stay home. You've done nothing wrong. There's no shame. You're so welcome to be at home. But if you go back, you need to go right now. And what we're going to do is let you know two things. We're going to let you know you're going to be all right. You'll recover fine from the surgery tomorrow. And we're letting you know your baby will be born healthy. So the minute they said that, I just felt so grateful to know that, so much love and respect. And they gave me this huge group hug again, which is the second one. I get one when I first get there, and I get one again. And what they tell me, though, the angel adds to that, but I want you to know life is going to be very difficult for many years because you're not on your life path. And I immediately was like, oh my goodness, I so want to do the right thing. I want to be on my life path. What am I supposed to be doing? What am I missing? What am I not doing? And he just gently shakes his head and he won't tell me. And I'm looking around at all the others. No one will tell me. They're kind of pantomiming, zipping their lip, throwing away the key. They're just, kind of being silly. So I go back down the escalator, get that huge hug, which I realize is not only that unconditional love, but it was energy, because I so needed that energy. I just was below empty on the gas tank, very literally. I've been, bleeding out for days. So I go back down the escalator, gently back into my body. I do have a successful surgery the next day. They estimated I lost 3/4 of my blood supply. I go home quite a few quarts low after a few days recovery. I go home. It's 6 weeks of essentially bed rest at home. I recover. I go back to work. I'm part-time 1 week. I'm full-time the next week. I'm at work for about 6 weeks thinking, wow, we made it through a really tough experience. Love my job, glowing performance evals. I've been there about 3 years. Suddenly, guess what? Get laid off. No job, no health insurance. Health is still pretty shaky and questionable. Whole families without health insurance. How am I going to deliver? 1 week later to the day, my husband comes home and says, I'm so sorry to tell you, we just went to payless paydays. We had to do a tremendous layoff, and I have to continue working as an owner of the company. We've got contracts we have to fulfill. We've got to try and sell the company, but I will not be getting paid. So now we've got no pay from either of us. He doesn't qualify for unemployment. I do, but it really was a rough road. We almost lost our house. We almost lost our new van. Thankfully, Bank of Mom, my mom graciously helped us out. And many more things went on. And from time to time, I'd hear from the angels. Took me until 2010. It took me 13 more years to felt I was on my path. I was divorced at that time. And I met the man who had the contract to wake me up spiritually. Then things started to come together. And that was about 10 years ago. So any questions, anything I can answer? I know that's the rapid fire. It's like all these are like a multiple hour stories we pack into 20 minutes the best we can.
It is. I know it's tough because these are like action packed stories. So thank you so much, everybody. Let's give Wendy a little bit of love. So thank you so much for sharing your story. No, that is, and that must have been like intense. I can't imagine feeling like you weren't getting the help that you needed in the middle of all that. That must have been terrifying. but so cool to have the experience of the angels and the experience of the being at the top of that escalator and having the reunited in that way. It must have been amazing.
It was so cool to recognize everyone because everyone looks the same. They were just these beautiful white orbs, but I knew exactly who they were. And I was fascinated that my paternal grandparents were there because I never met them because they had died before I was born.
Oh, very cool.
So that was one of the many fascinating things, but the angel was really specific. There's not a lot of time at home. He's like, you've got limited time here or you won't be able to go back. So listen well. So I literally only ever took that one step at home, but boy, I wanted to stay until they said, are you going to go back for your children? And that was just such a clear choice. So easy.
Yeah. All right, you guys. So that is our presentation for today. So thank you guys. Thanks so much to our amazing speakers for this. I just feel so honored to have you guys join us and to share your stories. It's just been, like, I can tell people are really, really moved by what we've heard. And by the way, we do have one question from Edie. She says, I always wonder, do you think it's one soul per being, as in my great grandmother is reincarnated, then I won't be able to talk to her anymore? Good question, Edie. I think my perspective of that is that if she's like, no, it's an interesting question. Can you speak to I believe that consciousness is existing even if she's reincarnated, that you could still speak with her, I believe. Kathy says, such incredible experiences and lessons. Thank you for this. Martha says, so awesome. I think so too. I second that. So awesome. So what a great way to kick off the weekend. Thank you guys so much for joining me. We'll be doing another one again next month on the second Thursday of the month, and I'll be announcing the topic and posting it for us. But thanks again to everybody. It's been wonderful spending the morning with you. Have a great weekend. Bye, you guys.